we're going to start off with just a short overview of footprints and what we've been doing with some National Guard, different locations, and then we're going to get into a panel discussions, and then you'll see a product demo which has been tailored to, could be tailored for your specific organization. So that's what we're doing. We're going to run about 45 minutes or so. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And I wanted to just start off to begin with a single slide about RightStar. And a lot of you probably have or maybe have not heard of RightStar before, but we are an ITSM consultancy. We've been a BMC solution provider for about 14 years, so for a very long time. We've done a lot in this particular space with all the different BMC products. There's a couple of things to point out here. The first thing is this Forrester block in the center, and Forrester is an IT consultancy, and they're pretty well known. They're kind of like Gartner. Instead of having a magic quadrant, they have something that's very similar, and they rated the ITSM consultancies in North America. They picked 13. We made the cut, and then they rated them based on points. And if you added up all the points, we came in tied for 5th place. So I was very excited about that. That was kind of a fun thing because we were in there with a lot of big companies. BMC was in there. ServiceNow was in there. Unisys, other humongous companies like that. And finally, the last point here is that we won an ethics award. We won this a few years ago, but I like to point that out because other companies or other organizations enjoy working with other ethical companies, and it certainly worked well for RightStar. So with that, Nikki, I'll turn things over to you.
Thank you very much, Dick. So to get started on my portion here, I just have a few things to review for as they relate to footprints in the National Guard. Dick was talking about our experience with BMC software, and I have been with RightStar for that period of time, even longer with our core team. So I have a lot of experience in working with National Guard organizations and other DoD and certainly other federal customers as well. In working with the Footprints tool, it seems to have been particularly successful for some of the shipyards, the DoD organizations, and particularly with National Guard units. Some of the reasons for that include the fact that there is a certificate of networthiness for both versions 11 and version 12, which is the latest release. It is available via the GSA schedule and the ITES software contract. The system itself is relatively easy to install, so it has a fairly minimal set of requirements in terms of application and database server specifications. It integrates well with other systems, so there are some basic things like setting up an address book through Active Directory to the more complex types of integrations that we do with scanning capabilities as well as other data sources for configuration management data, including BMC's own client management software. And overall, it offers automation to the organization. It acts as a centralized and secure way to manage the processes, services, and assets that are part of IT's responsibility. So for a typical IT organization, one of the basic functions that the IT organization plays is to capture incoming requests. And what we found in working with IT groups is that in their need to provide systems for other teams, whether it be for a facilities group or human resources, we've been able to extend this beyond IT to other parts of the organization. So if you have onboarding requests that incorporate tasks from several different groups, it is possible to set up specific, what we call workspaces within Footprints to capture the requirements and meet the needs of these other teams and other groups within the organization. The workflow is fairly straightforward, and there are a lot of points during the request management process where we can find efficiencies and provide greater automation to the organization. So there's a way to assign requests, to automate notifications. You can open up a self-service console for end users. You can tailor the workflow, have close tracking of the resolution and closure of the request records, so for good record keeping and quality assurance. And then finally, there's the ability to provide reporting back to the organization as to the performance of the IT team. So Dick, that's all that I had for my piece, and I'll hand it back to you.
That was great, short and sweet. And this is my favorite part of any type of webinar or seminar, and that is that we're going to do a panel discussion. And so, Nikki, you can't go away. We're going to need you to stay on here. And just, Nikki introduced herself a little bit, but she has been with RightStar for about 14 years now. She's an ITIL expert. She also is a senior PM, so she's been involved with really, hundreds of different customers over the years and has lots of good experience about what makes a successful implementation. So also joining Nikki on the panel discussion is Bill Roberts, and I'm very excited that Bill is here. We've worked with him many times before. Bill is with BMC as a senior solution engineer. He's been in this space for about 15 years, and of course, the good news is he's very familiar with all the BMC products, but I think he has a real space in his heart for footprints, because Bill, I believe you came in from the footprint side of the company. So I'm very happy to have you on as well. Okay.
I appreciate that, Dick. And I was actually a customer even before joining Nomura, so I actually leveraged Footprints as a customer before ever working there. So yeah, you're right. Footprints definitely has a very special place in my heart.
Oh, good. Okay, so we got the right team on. And then the other thing I wanted to do, they're not part of the panel discussion, but I just wanted to quickly introduce Liz Yost, who's RightStar's account manager for the National Guard, and Mandy Pelletier, who's the BMC's account manager. So we really have you covered here pretty well. But let's start off with a question or two. And by the way, there's a Q&A box. So if you all have any questions, you can ask them now. We'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions if you wanted to ask something later. But this would certainly be a good place to ask questions. So in Footprints, there's this thing called Workspaces, and they can be used for both IT and non-IT applications. So let's discuss some of the different workspaces that may apply here. And so who wants to answer that? Nikki, is this a good one for you?
Yeah, I can start on that, and certainly Bill can provide any other input that from what he's seen over the years. From what we see most often, of course, is, as I mentioned, the request management component. So for IT organizations, that's a lot of times break-fix issues. But we've really seen an extension beyond that for different types of taskers or requests that come in. So certainly there are capabilities within the system for problem management, for change management, for knowledge management, so keeping a knowledge base. So you can have components incorporated into a really cohesive service knowledge management system. Beyond IT, there are as many different types of request systems as you have departments in an organization. So I had mentioned a few of them, like facilities and human resources. We've seen legal groups that have had requests that they've managed using our systems, even financial teams. So there really isn't a limit, and the setup of the separate workspaces allows you to have better control over the types of information that you're capturing, the routing of it, and being able to keep some of those things separate as needed.
Okay. Bill, I don't know if you want to add to that, but here's another question that's related. And so let me throw this one out, and that is, why is Footprints such a good fit for the National Guard?
Well, yeah, I definitely have seen where a number of armories have leveraged footprints because of that workspace capability, right? That ability to be a force multiplier and take care of multiple different mission-based processes is I think, one of the main reasons it's been such a good fit. Because like most of our customers, especially our customers that are in the federal space, budget constraints are always a reality. So whenever you can take a single application and leverage it to multiple mission processes is definitely going to increase that return on the investment there. I've seen National Guard armories leverage this for, as you mentioned, both IT and non-IT, things like training class requests and schedule management for those training classes, and even project task management. So when you've got multiple tasks that needing to be done for a project, that can be applied very quickly. So yeah, I think that the workspaces are definitely a big benefit to National Guard. I also think that the flexibility in design, right, the ability to really tailor it to fit your specific needs, it makes a big difference for our National Guard customers. And then finally, because a lot of armories are dealing with folks that are working in other jobs, they may be obviously geographically dispositioned. Having that web-based access really makes a big difference, right? Not having to rely on kind of the older client-server type of functionality, and being able to open this up to the web so that their end users can access it from wherever they may be, I think makes a big difference for them as well.
Great. Okay, well, kind of on the same tangent that you just discussed, there are other products out there in the marketplace, and what makes Footprints different from other solutions?
Well, I feel like we just keep talking about the workspaces over and over, but that's definitely one of the biggest ones, Dick, right? The way that Footprints addresses this concept of multiple different processes within a single implementation is without a doubt unique to Footprints. I've worked with a lot of other service management solutions, even ones from BMC like Remedy, that don't approach this concept the same way. So I think that's probably one of the biggest differentiators. The other one I would say is that extreme flexibility combined with ease of use. Usually when you look at a service management solution like this, you're either going to get extreme ease of use, right? But that kind of comes with a cost with a lot of other solutions, where that ease of use means you're kind of locked in from a configuration standpoint, that you don't have a whole lot of flexibility. I've heard some of our Trackit customers have that complaint, that while it's easy to use, sometimes they can't break out of that Trackit pre-configured shell too much. Or on the other side of the house, if you get the flexibility, it becomes so complex and such an administrative burden that you can't leverage that flexibility because you oftentimes don't have the staff to do it. So Footprints sits in this, I think, unique sweet spot of bringing that flexibility but still maintaining that ease of use. You don't have to hire some highly skilled administrator that has development skills and can script and code and all of that, right? We always say if you can navigate a website, you can be taught how to administer Footprints. So I think that's another real major differentiator. And then finally, the integration that Footprints has with other solutions, and that kind of open scalability that it brings to the table is a big differentiator as well.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I'd met with a customer just about a week ago, and one of the things that they kept saying over and over again was what an excellent value Footprints is when they were looking at the total cost of ownership. So I'm sure that factors in as well. So,
yeah, certainly. I think that kind of goes along with what Bill was saying about the personnel who are required to administer the system. So we were working a lot of times with people from the service desk, or it doesn't have to be somebody with advanced technical skills to be able to administer the system. The updates are fairly simple. The installation is very simple, and also the system itself is fairly small. It has I guess the word I want to say is footprint. So FootPrints has a relatively small footprint in terms of overall computer server requirements and the specifications. So we were talking the other day about a database, and the consultant's point to the customer was, despite all this data that we have, you really don't have it's not taking up a lot of space. There isn't going to be a lot of management of the overall servers required.
Yeah, and Nikki, just to personalize this, I guess, a little bit more, I know we've started to do some work at different National Guard locations.
Yeah.
Is there any that comes to mind, or any that you wanted to comment on about what we're doing or what we're about to do?
I think that, like all IT organizations, they are hard pressed for time and resources. So anything that can help them to do their jobs more easily is certainly welcome, and they're all very eager as they get started with their implementations. And I think also in the way we approach the implementations, we do put a fair amount of responsibility on the organizations themselves, because we want them to be able to effectively use and maintain the system once we're done. So we approach this as an enablement as opposed to a turnkey implementation. So we go in, and a lot of the focus that we have during the implementation is on training and being sure that the people who are going to be administering the system have a good handle on it, and that they're part of the overall design and build of the application, so that it's going to better meet their needs. And also, as I said, so that they will be better able to maintain and administer the system once we're done. So that also kind of leads into the smaller cost to implement, or the lower cost to implement for the organization.
Okay, I like it. One final question here, Bill. What does the future of FootPrints look like?
Well, Dick, we are constantly innovating, and Valerie, if I can get share capability, I'll actually bring something up on the screen to speak to that question. Sorry, I kind of sprung that on you last minute there. When we look at the roadmap for FootPrints, one of the first places that we really go to is our customers, and I'm sharing out on the monitor now our BMC Communities website, and each of our products exists out there, and each individual one has its own space. And so we're actually looking at the FootPrints space on Communities right now. You don't actually have to be a customer to join Communities. You can come in. There's public information that's available there. Not everything I'm showing you is available to the public, but I did want to just give all of you on the webinar a quick view into how we are informing the roadmap for development into FootPrints. And as I mentioned, the number one place we go is to our customers. And as you see here, we have this concept of ideas here in Communities. And anyone can author an idea, some functionality that you would like to see, or some change that you would like to see within FootPrints. And folks like myself, folks like everyone from RightStar are on these Communities, and most importantly, our product managers and developers are very, very active in here. And within these ideas, they will be reviewed, and if they get voted up by the other members enough times, so you actually have direct impact, not just our customers, but our partners like RightStar, have direct impact into the prioritization of that roadmap as well. And then we provide direct feedback here as well. So you can see things that are coming in the very next release. We have a release for Footprints 12 coming out next month. So things like some enhanced copy functionality is there, having some more detailed information being put into the audit trail for a tickets around what's happening with business rules and things along those lines. You can also see things that have been evaluated and have been put onto the roadmap, although we don't have specific time frames for them to be delivered yet. Items that are still being reviewed by the product team, et cetera, et cetera. So you have real clear visibility into it, but I think the real takeaway I want everyone to have is that roadmap is being heavily influenced. The primary place that roadmap is being directed by is based off of customer feedback, and we're constantly adding new functionality in based off of that feedback. So you do see some extensions around built-in functionality. There are some new concepts that we're looking into, things like extending the project management capability and things along those lines as well. So we're constantly really trying to dive into what's going to be the most beneficial for our customers, what's going to make Footprints that much more usable. Things like auto-add customers, right? So I mentioned that it's a web-based solution. The fact that you can open it up so that someone can come in and register, if you will, within Footprints to start to submit tickets was an important thing for some of our customers. So you see a lot of that type of ideas that come out of BMC communities.
All right. Well, thanks very much, Bill. I think that wraps up the panel discussion portion. Again, if you have any questions, we'll get to them at the end. But that takes us then to the demo part of the presentation. So, Bill, that's going to be you. And now you can get those of you that are out there, you can kind of see what we've been talking about. So,
great.
Ready?
Thanks, Dick. I appreciate it. And I'll also, once again, just encourage anyone, if you do have questions, feel free to go into the WebEx and select the Q&A panel. We'll try to keep that running throughout the time, and I'll ask Dick and Nikki if y'all can keep an eye on that for me. If there's something that's really pertinent, feel free to interrupt me in the middle of the demonstration. I'll be happy to drill down on that at any point in time. So, as I mentioned, Footprints is 100% web-based, so I've brought up my demonstration environment here on Google Chrome browser, but it really doesn't matter which browser that you leverage. You can use any of the primary browsers out there, and the effect will be exactly the same. Similarly, mobile device access is built in as well, leveraging the built-in browsers on those mobile devices. So smartphones, tablet access, all of that is inherent to the system and available immediately out of the box. When I first log in here, I'm landed on a fairly typical IT workspace. You can see that I may have appropriated someone's banner ad just to show you some of the customization properties that you can do within Workspaces. You can change colors, you can change layouts, all of that different types of thing. But I do want to start off just talking a little bit about those workspaces that we keep mentioning and try to help you understand exactly what they are. So when we architected Footprints, we kind of built it into different containers, and Workspaces are one of those containers. You see the other ones here, things like address books and configuration management databases. If you're not familiar with that terminology, it's basically a database of assets, right, of configuration items. Knowledge bases are another example of a container. And each one of those containers, you can have multiple instances of them. So you can have multiple CMDBs, you can have multiple address books, multiple knowledge bases, and of course, as we've been talking about, multiple workspaces there as well. So if we drill down into those workspaces, you can see that we've got a few that are configured here. Some of those most common ones that we mentioned, an IT service desk, a human resources, a facilities workspace. And then under each one of those, you can decide what types of records exist. So for instance, in the IT service desk here, we've got incident and problem and service request records that exist. If we go over to human resources, we'll see a case as well as a new hire record that exists. And then in facilities, we've kept it a little bit more simple with a primary work order and a vehicle reservation as well. So within each one of those workspaces, you get to define what those records really are. And then if you drill down into any one of those records, you get the ability to define multiple different forms. So it can look different for agents versus that end user customer. And when you drill down into one of those, you can then define multiple tabs, multiple fields, lay out those fields any way that you want. There's obviously some pre-configured fields that you can leverage, but you can also create and add your own. So this is where that flexibility really comes into play, where within any one of those tabs, you can very quickly and easily add a field that's already been created, or create your own field simply by dragging and dropping it into place. So if I come in, I want to put this field on this tab, put it right here in the middle. I can decide, is this going to be based off of an existing field, or am I going to create a brand new field? Give that field a name here real quick. Just as an example, this was a drop down, so I've got to get it some choices. We'll give it some choices real quick. And then save it. And so what Footprints is doing now is actually reaching out to the database, creating that column in the right table to create this field on the fly. You don't have to reboot the server or kick anybody off or anything along those lines. That demo field now exists. And you can come back and actually publish that out into production without interrupting anyone and move forward. So you saw how easy that was to do. So you can see that you don't have to have any special skills. And if you really think about now how much that opens you up to building out those forms for those workspaces, the possibilities truly are endless. And so as you start to build out those different workspaces, you can then present those workspaces to those different end users in different portals. So understanding some of that back-end administration that's going on, we can now come in and see, for instance, what that would look like for the human resources group, what their portal interface would look like. And you can see that the colors have changed, the logo up here has changed, the layout's a little bit different. So each one of those individual interfaces can change based off of the types of records that particular user needs to have. And you can see the buttons up here have changed, and we're using the language that makes sense to that type of user. So it's not always going to be called an incident or a request. In this case, for HR, it's a new case, right? And when they go and get that new case, they're going to get those fields that are important to them for their type of work, right? So they've got someone that's changing their job. Maybe they're going to a new location, or they're changing their salary, or whatever that may be. And in a similar manner, you can see that if we go over to the facilities workspace, it once again has a different color scheme, has a different a logo, a different layout, and once again, now we've got work order. And you can see that we've also tied this into things outside of Footprints. So there's apparently this website, I'm not working in facilities, but facilitiesnet.com or something along those lines that is a pretty important website for folks in facilities. And we've actually brought in their RSS feed here. So within Footprints, we're actually showing information from an external system. There's a lot of different ways that you could do that. And once again, if I were to create a new work order for facilities, the layout's going to be different. The fields are going to be different. If I come in and do request for service, you'll notice that as I'm making these selections, other fields are popping up. So you can actually have dependencies that show up. So if I say I need building access, then we'll say, all right, well, which site do you need access to? Or if I need to set up an office, okay, well, fine. What's the office number? What types of things do you need to have set up? And you can make these dependencies as many levels deep as you want, which provides you that ability to have a dynamic form that is responding to the information that that end user is putting in, so that you don't have to have this big confusing form with all these fields that may or may not apply for that particular request. As someone's telling you what they want, the form is actually coming back and saying, okay, well, if that's what you want, this is the information that we need. So you neither have to show them that really confusing up front, with lots of fields, nor do you have to simplify the form so much that once they've submitted their request, you've got to call them or have back and forth email exchanges to gather all the pertinent information before you can actually get started. You've, once again, automated that process, that that interview back and forth with the customer, so that you get all that information up front, but still keep that interface as simple as possible for that end user, so that they're not having to navigate through a confusing interface at all. And when we talk about end users, you can even create things like a consolidated customer portal that gives that end user access to multiple different areas. So you can see here, we've actually created a service catalog that we've put out for this self-service user that shows them IT and facilities and HR all in one place. So we've simplified it even further. We're not forcing them to know which place to go to for what type of request. You give them that one stop that they can go to, whether they need to come in and request some new application, right? Or whether they need to go and get some sort of office services, right? And they want that red stapler that they've always wished for, right? Whatever that may be, you can provide those services in a consolidated manner, such that when they request that service, it opens up the ticket in the appropriate workspace. So in this case, since it was that for that red stapler, they can have a work order sent over to facilities. If we go back over here and we go into IT services and we request that an Acrobat Pro be installed, when we request that service, you'll see that it's actually going to open up a service request over in the IT service desk. So consolidate all that information, but still let each of those individual groups have their own forms, their own layout, their own workflow that exists behind it. And by the way, that workflow can include things like approval. So in this case, Adobe Acrobat Pro isn't cheap, right? We're not going to let just anybody request that. We need to have that go through some approval process. And when they submit that to IT, maybe it goes to their boss for approval first. And all of that is built into the workflow that exists within the workspace within that particular record. So, for instance, if we have, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong one. That's an incident. That was a service request that had the approval workflow. If we go into the service request item, we can see that there is an approval workflow process that's built into that. So whenever anyone submits something that requires approval, this workflow now takes hold, and it goes through this approval process, which actually will send it to a specific list of approvers, right? And these approvers can be defined by individuals. They can be defined by teams. So if you think about infrastructure change requests, you can actually have a change advisory board, a CAB team that's been defined. You can even have dynamic fields that have stored like that person's supervisor, so that dynamically Footprints can say, all right, I know who this person is, and I've pulled their submitters, their supervisor's information from, say, Active Directory. We'll route it dynamically to that person's supervisor for approval. So you can make these processes as simple, right? This is a fairly simple process, or as complex. If we go into our infrastructure change management workspace here, you can see that we've actually got multiple workflow processes for emergency, standard, and normal change requests. And that change request can be quite more complex, right? You can have multiple approval processes in there. You can have loops. You can have whatever your process is, Footprints can follow that. So you can keep it as simple or as complex as you need to address the needs for your particular mission, whatever that may be, whether that's an IT mission or a non-IT mission, right? Whether that is dependent and requires work from multiple different groups, right? One of the examples that we hear about a lot from our customers as probably one of the most painful processes they have to go through is that concept of onboarding someone into the organization. When you bring someone new in and you've got to provision not just the equipment, which is not easy, but probably a little bit easier than provisioning their access, all of their accounts, getting their roles correct, right? All of those things that require coordination with multiple different teams, right? Human resources is involved in that. Facilities has to get their workspace area ready. IT, the hardware team's got to get their laptop or their desktop ready. The applications teams have to create the access rights for them. So you've got all these different groups that are involved. And one of the biggest benefits that I've heard about from a lot of our customers is building in that distributed workflow into a Footprints workspace to allow it to farm off the appropriate tasks at the appropriate time, because there's oftentimes dependencies between them, right? You know, nobody can get started until HR has processed all of the correct paperwork. You can't maybe create an application access until the AD account has been created or whatever that may be. There's oftentimes dependencies, and Footprints can understand and follow those dependencies such that tasks will not be made active or assigned until all of the prerequisite work has been done. And not only does that gain efficiencies because you've automated that process, it also gives you the ability to audit and report on those processes. So if you miss the mark and not everything is ready when that person is ready to start, you can go back and look at the process and understand where are those bottlenecks, where are we seeing the delays, where do we need to apply more resources or maybe delve deeper into the process mechanics and understand, hey, maybe there's something we need to do to make this faster, but have that quantitative data to make an informed decision instead of having that subjective finger-pointing discussion of, well, we couldn't do it because we were waiting on them, or et cetera, et cetera. So gives you the data to actually look at it and understand the process and improve that process going forward. So I'm not trying to show you everything about Footprints. We're coming close to the end of the time here, but I really wanted to give you the concept that within Footprints you can have as many different processes, and those processes can be as simple or as complex as you need to address whatever those mission requirements are. And then you have the ability to show that to the appropriate people in a way that is comfortable to them, using language that they understand and not forcing them to learn a whole new vocabulary just so that they can come in and submit a request. So with that, Dick, Nikki, did we have any questions that came in that we can address at this time?
Yeah, excellent job, Bill. That was really good. There was one question that had come in earlier, and I think, Nikki, this one is really for you, and you touched on this a little bit, but the question here is, Nikki, can you describe the level of effort necessary to get Footprints up and running?
So, yes, I did touch on that before, just mentioning briefly that we typically take an enablement approach to these implementations. So in terms of the level of effort, of course, it will be different for each organization depending on the needs of the organization. But in general, we do like to provide a fair amount of training, especially for the administrators. So it's typically 3 to 5 days up front just for the administrator review. And sometimes that's sufficient for an organization to get started, but typically we will work with them through the design and build phase for at least 1 or 2 different workspaces. So the most common would be the incident workspace, which is for the general requests, and then also service request management and enabling the end user portal for self-service. So some of those basic capabilities, anywhere from, I would say, 1 week to 2 weeks for each workspace after that. So most of the projects that my team is involved with, especially for some of the National Guard groups, anywhere, it might be anything from as little as 1 week to maybe at the outside 4 to 8 weeks. So relatively short or low level of effort to implement. We don't always have to do those as consecutive weeks either. We may sometimes do those as an every other week schedule. It really just depends on the need of the organization.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. And obviously, it's enablement so that we are also working with you to make sure that you know what to do down the road. Here's a question that popped up, and I don't know if we have the answer to this. We may need to get back to you on that one. And it popped up, and it says here. Hold on. It says here, I'm an Air Guard guy and thus fall under the Air Force accreditation side. Okay, so currently, to my knowledge, there's only an Army con in place, of which has some restrictions tied to it, namely that only XX unit can use. And that goes with another question that's related that says my IA folks are telling me that if we adopt the Army con, we have to adopt with restrictions. So I guess that's something that we're going to have to research. So if you're Air Force, you can't use the Army con, you have to use your own, and we don't know where we are. Does Liz or Bill or Nikki, any feedback on that?
We've certainly implemented at plenty of, I know we've done Navy and yes, we have done several Air Force organizations. So
with FootPrints.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add, Nikki, is that we are on the Navy DATMs list, and we also have Air Force ATOs in place. So for anyone that's in an Air Guard situation that needs to fall under the Air Force chain of command for IA, we can get you access to those ATOs because they will probably be more applicable for you than that Army certificate of net worthiness. And I do also want to mention the point about the Army con having restrictions. That is true with version 12. We have folks that are getting us through the Enterprise Con process, but just know that we've already been there before. Version 11 had an Enterprise Con that did not have those restrictions, so we do hope and expect to have that Enterprise Con for version 12 here as well.
All right, good to hear. Last question looks like here is, what are the current NG states that are using the product? So, Nikki, I know Connecticut was one, right?
Yes, so I've worked with a number of them, including Connecticut, North Dakota, South Dakota. I don't know if Liz, Mandy, or Bill have any other information on that. We do also have Liz's contact information that we can show on the screen to, so she can follow up with organizations who might be interested.
Okay. Well, great. Well, why don't we turn to that last slide? I think, Bill, you got the ball right now.
No.
Who has it?
I guess he does, but
yeah.
Valerie would need to make him the presenter.
Okay, and then we can
or make me the presenter.
Okay.
I've got you there, Nikki. You should have the ball now.
Great.
Okay. And I think we can wrap up. So I think we've come to the end now. We should be looking at a slide that has the contact information up here. You'll see Liz Yost's contact information. There's an email address. There's a phone number. Obviously, you can hit the RightStar website if you'd like. She will work with Mandy from BMC, so we make sure that we'll get you either a personalized demo or a little bit more information about your specific needs and requirements. So that pretty much, as I said before, takes us to the end. I certainly appreciate everybody's time.